Good morning, everybody, for coming. Good morning, and thanks for coming to the first Student Service Provider Forum. I'm Lorenzo Costantino. I represent Fondazione ENDISU this morning, and Fondazione ENDISU is a partner of a project funded by the European Union program Connecting Europe Facility, that is led by the European University Foundation, here represented today by Deborah Luke. It's a project that really is about connecting universities and student service providers across the European educational area to make sure that we can streamline the processes of international mobility of students, but also of staff and researchers across the European educational area. This project, the EDSSI project, is coming to an end. It's finishing at the end of August, and notwithstanding the fact that it's about to close, there is already a repeater, which is the EDSSI 2, which is a project that is stemming actually from the needs and the challenges highlighted during the implementation of the EDSSI project. At the same time, the EDSSI is coming to an end in the sense that the funding is coming to an end, but this is when the project in itself is supposed to produce scale in terms of usability of the main products. One of the main products that we have developed during the project is precisely the dashboard, the EDSSI dashboard, which we will look at during the day. And the dashboard is a fancy name for a very useful tool that shortens the distance between the universities, and in particular, the international relations offices of the universities, and all the service providers that are out there in either the public sector, so it could be a local government service provision, in the private sector, so it could be a private sector provider of transportation and accommodation services as well, or it could be a hybrid mode, meaning that it could be a service provider that operates under an agreement of sort with a higher education institution. So it's a typical public-private partnership modality of service delivery. The dashboard then becomes a connector, a focal point to bring together these two institutional actors so that they can better serve and anticipate the needs and the requirements of the students in international mobility. I wanted to introduce the panelists today that will be guiding us through the different steps of the EDSSI project. I will start with Sara Elgomaze from Fondazione ENDISU, who will be guiding us through making the business case or presenting setting the stage of what are the challenges and what were the opportunities that led the consortium to bring together universities and service providers to develop this EDSSI infrastructure and this digital tool, which is the dashboard. I then have together with me from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Mr. Nikos Liolios, who is the digital enthusiast behind this. He's the digital mastermind behind this infrastructure that then culminates in the dashboard. And we had a team from the University of Porto that today is represented by Bruno Pereira, who will be our co-pilot, taking us this flight simulation. I have then Émilie Lecor, who represents CNUS. CNUS is the umbrella organization in France that manages 16 regional centers of the agencies that actually oversee the students' experience in higher education, from entry to progress to exit. And of course, they cater to more than 6 million students nationwide in France. And so they give us the perspective of the people behind the scene of making all of these happen. And then last but not least, I have Deborah Luke representing the European University Foundation that was leading this EDSSI project. The purpose of the forum today is really about an open forum. Over the lifetime of the project, we interacted a lot with international relations offices of higher education institutions. We connected with students, both directly and also through students' associations across Europe. And today, the idea of the forum is to keep this as the place where you ask the questions that you were always too shy to ask, or when you ask obvious questions to which there may be not so obvious answers. And also it's meant to be a place of exchange. We really would like to hear from the different service providers about their stories, about their challenges, about their ambitions. And to do that, we also have the facilitation and the presence of two large student service providers. We have Mr. Pereira, who is the CEO of Indomus, and that is a private sector provider of accommodation services, and they cater to thousands of students every academic year. And then we have Ms. Rita Montrone from Educad, that is a service provider that covers the whole range of services, from transportation to social, from health to financial services to accommodation and libraries for students, and cater also to students in undertaking an international mobility. One caveat that I wanted to, or a provocative thought that I had for today, was to start thinking of students undertaking international mobilities as our users, in the case of public service providers, or in the case of Mr. Maringoni and Indomus, as our clients. So these are our users and our clients, and these are users and clients that come in different forms and shapes, that are undertaking, are embarking on an educational experience that is taking them from a country to another, from a culture to another. So there is a lot of anxiety, maybe there is a lot of emotions going through, and there is a lot of activities that these international students need or can be involved. And that's where the service providers come at play. I've spoken too much because I've killed 8 minutes of our precious time. The idea is really to invite all the participants to exchange their experiences, share your frustrations, raise your doubts, raise questions, but also give us a sense of how useful these EDSSI dashboards can be for you, because it was really meant to be a digital bridge to shorten the distance between the service providers and the users and the facilitators, which are the higher educational institutions. I stop here. I also invite all the participants to raise your hand, come in at any time. If you're too busy or to show your face, just use the chat box here. You can leave in the chat your question, your comments. You can write it to everyone. You can write it only to me. It really depends on how you feel about participating in this exchange today. So without further ado, let me leave the floor, the digital floor, to Sara from Fondazione ENDISU to set the stage of what we have been doing in the last few months and years and what is next. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for introducing the topic of today and the purpose of this forum, that is the first European Student Service Providers Forum, where we would like to hear, as Lorenzo said, your feedback. So the feedback directly from the SSPs on the soon-to-be published new dashboard module. Indeed, the most innovative element of the EDSSI project is the so-called Student Service Providers module, a module of the dashboard that invites student service providers like you to the dashboard and makes it possible to share their data and to be promoted and sponsored among the partners and students of the higher education institution in a safe and comprehensive way. in the context of the Erasmus Plus program. So now I would like to briefly introduce and shed light on a few things, and then I will leave the floor to my colleagues who will explain more about the project, the EDSSI project, and the new module of the dashboard itself. Since we are going to show you something new, as anticipated, we thought it would be better at first to present the problem case, where we decided to start with at the beginning of the project. So let me share my screen. Okay, now you should see it. Okay. So one of the main focus of this project is the Erasmus students. So students who will be involved for a semester or two abroad while enrolled in their home university. So they decide to study for a short period of time abroad in another partner university. So the Erasmus program, as you might already know, concerns the students who travel within the European Union borders. Otherwise, we call the program using other names such as exchange or others. So the Erasmus program is very relevant to the Erasmus Commission and to all of us. It started back on time in 1987 with only 3,244 students, and now this number has grown incredibly into something bigger and bigger, with more than 300,000 students each year study or train under the Erasmus Plus umbrella. And in general, we all know that the program throughout the years has been shown to drive innovation and social inclusion in higher education and in our society. And in general, there is more than 80% of Erasmus Plus graduates that are employed within 3 months of graduation. So everything seems good. There is benefit to students, benefit for the providers providing services to this big number of students or customers, as Lorenzo said, that every year travel around Europe, and also for the higher education sector. But the reality is a little bit more difficult, as always. Indeed, when Erasmus students arrive to the new city, the problem is that they have no direct access to the services offered to local students, or not a complete access to the services, often because they are explained or in local language and not in English, and international offices of the universities most of the time have no platform to search for or share information about these services with partner universities and student service provider organizations. And this lack of quality of information for students represent one of the main problems for students in mobility. Students indeed, we can say that, struggle to find the necessary information on funding, for instance, accommodation, which is one of the main services for Erasmus students. And this leads to the fact that in many cases, students go abroad without having permanent accommodation arranged. And there is also the problem, connected to the discrimination and fraud towards Erasmus students, as well as the financial burden and the insufficient student housing offer in many cities. Of course, now I'm taking as an example the housing as student service, but some of those issues that I mentioned are also valid for other services, such as the canteen and food services, but also healthcare and transportations and others. So if we look at the higher education sector, the internationalization is a high priority, but only a few higher education institutions think that the lack of adequate and affordable services is an obstacle to internationalization. So what I want to highlight here, and also in the project, what we highlighted in the project is also that services play a relevant and essential role in a student mobility journey from the very beginning to the very end. So satisfactory and available services are an integral part of a successful internationalization strategy. So with this project, we aim to raise awareness about the issue and especially try to build a trusted network among all the different stakeholders involved. So higher education institutions, international relation offices, student service providers as like you, student organizations, and so on and so forth. So we tried with EDSSI project to build synergies among all relevant stakeholders to be able to address the challenges in a more, let's say, systematic and effective way. So there is the urgent need to open this close collaboration between higher education institutions and private and public service providers. And of course, if this collaboration becomes stronger, the benefits are from both sides. Indeed, for instance, looking at the numbers I mentioned earlier related to the Erasmus students, student accommodation, for instance, is a new emerging market that offers many business opportunities if, of course, students' needs are properly addressed. So student services is potentially a very profitable market and should therefore be considered as a possible market for investment. Of course, when we refer to student service providers, we do realize that the European context is so diverse and that there are different modules of working. In fact, the student service management may vary according to the country we consider, because the European higher education area is deeply diverse within its borders. So the student affairs and services in Europe have evolved over more than 100 years. And it comes as no surprise that there is a great diversity in the ways that these services are organized, but also funded and integrated into the higher education area. And there are more or less 3 modules for the provision of student services in higher education across Europe. These modules are the one that you see here. So the comprehensive student service module, or also called regional public module, the sectoral student services module, and the university services module. So for each of these, I will try to describe shortly the main features, but of course, in reality, these modules are more complex and fluid and can also overlap and complement each other, depending on each country's history in higher education and tradition in public social services. And of course, we would like later on during the discussion to hear from you if you think that somehow those modules represent your organization, or maybe you belong to another module. So going deeper into the modules, so the comprehensive student services module is most advanced in France, Germany, Italy, and Norway. And here today we have representatives of some of those countries. Student services are provided by regional public agencies that offer their services directly to the students of several higher education institutions in one city or region. So we have large institutions such as the Centres Régionaux des Offres Universitaires et Scolaires, so the CRUS in France. Then we have the Studentenwerk in Germany, but also in Italy, we have the Ente Regionale per il Diritto allo Studio Universitario, that is a regional entity for the right to university study in Italy. So in continental Europe, the local or regional agencies unit in a national center or association are based on self-help, and they offer services both to students individually and to their higher education institution as a public organization. And in addition, services in this module are typically rolled out all over the city or even region. So student service provider can thus form large networks of services of the same quality to many students in different higher education institutions. And in this model, the services provided by public service student providers usually include student housing in residence halls at rental levels below the market price, dining services such as canteen, cafeterias at subsidized prices, but also grants and loans based on social needs criteria, social and psychological counseling services, cultural activities, and others. The second module, the sectoral student services module, is the second one, very well established in Scandinavia, Austria, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. where different sectoral institutions exist for each type of service. For instance, there is usually a public national agency for student housing, another one for counseling services, etc. And the third typology is the university services module, which is very well known in is well known in Eastern European and Anglo-Saxon countries. There is no such comprehensive organization nor sectoral specialization, and the higher education institution itself has to provide most or all the services to its own students, mostly directly on campus. And the services are thus less centralized and often more costly than in the comprehensive services module, since each higher education institution has to arrange for its own students these services. And sometimes actually entire sectors of services are even outsourced to public or private third-party providers. So you see the diversity and complexity of the student service management in Europe, and we know that, and we want to highlight here that there is the need of having somehow this network where all the stakeholders communicate constantly one another for the benefits of all. And of course, we would like to, today we would like to hear from you, first of all, your feedback on the tool we will present in a moment, but also we would like to hear from you your experience, your challenges, and of course, your inputs on what we will talk today. Now I will leave the floor to back to my colleagues, who will introduce who will talk more about the project and the new module. So for now, thank you for listening, and Lorenzo, I will give you.
Thank you, Sara. This is very useful because I think it's really about setting the stage and getting a feeling and an understanding of the high degree of fragmentation that we have within the different countries in the European educational area. Also, when we think of the European educational area, we need to think of broader Europe. It's not only the EU member states. We need to come to terms with the fact that the EU, that Europe is becoming a focal point for higher education at global level. And so we're expanding this European educational area. While you were talking also, another element is not only the fragmentation, but also the diversity. So the different systems that we have at play. And so our Erasmus dashboard really comes in hand as a digital tool that can bring together all the different actors. This is quite important because we will need really to get a sense of how this digital transformation is going about, and it's also investing these elements of the international mobility. I would leave the floor now to Nikos, I think, who will, who is the inevitable speaker when we talk about digitalization and the different challenges for higher education. Thank you, Nikos, to guide us through these next steps.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for giving me the floor. Just give me 1 second just to share the proper slideshow. Okay, and if the slides do not change, please let me know. I've encountered this problem before.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo, and welcome to all participants in this forum. I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to exchange views on how we can accommodate the student service providers' feedback and input in this very interesting and very valuable digitalization of the Erasmus Plus mobilities. So I'm going to present you a little bit short the EDSSI project and its relation to the student service providers. So first of all, I would like to say that there are 15 partners in this project under the coordination of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, which I have the honor to represent, and European University Foundation being the technical coordinator. So just having a quick look of the partners, you see that there are many organizations and universities that have the experience, a long-term experience dating back to 2015 with the digitalization of the Erasmus Plus mobilities. So with this project, we have gathered all this knowledge and this know-how of these excellent colleagues. And I would like to also correct Lorenzo that I'm not the mastermind behind that. There are too many colleagues, technical geniuses, and also on business level that have made this the outcomes of this project possible. So what we have done, we have gathered, we have put this knowledge together in order to manage and to maintain and further develop a comprehensive student mobility infrastructure. So this was the case to have an integrated infrastructure that would allow for additional entry points for academic and non-academic services. So we have the interinstitutional agreements, we have the learning agreements, exchanging of data, and of course, non-academic services like the student service provider services. And all this with the aim to provide a seamless mobility experience to all our students. First of all, Erasmus students. This was the start and the starting point, I would say. And of course, this would be extended further to international students in general. The tasks of the project can be divided in 5, let's say, main tasks. The first is the authentication of students entering different services. The second is the interoperable infrastructure, meaning a network of data exchange between higher education institutions, a web service platform, and this is mainly, and to be honest, the Erasmus dashboard, which provides an alternative entry point for higher education institutions in order to exchange data within this network. And of course, there was also the engagement of stakeholders like this forum and support of stakeholders through the knowledge base, the trainings, and the help desk. So for the sake of this forum, I think we should concentrate on the tasks 2 and 3. So the network, the interoperable network, and the web service platform. So in the context of this web service platform, the innovative element of the EDSSI project is that we realized, as Sara mentioned before, that there is a need to expand a little bit and to go beyond the academic community, the higher education institutions. And so there are student service providers that should share their information, first of all, not services, I would say, but information, first of all, about these services they provide. So the solution was an SSP module, a module that could act as an inventory. So first of all, to know one another, so to know who are these student service providers that provide these services, and of course, have a database of these provided services. The benefits of this module in the context of the EDSSI project would be, of course, having centralized information. So this is the main focal point of this module, and which will, of course, allow us to have a targeted support for students, which is also our end game, to support our students through their mobility experience, and have trusted SSPs that can that can connect and can exchange information with a trusted network of higher education institutions that we already have. Unfortunately, for the time being, it's not the aim to include them in the network, but to make a bridge. So I think the innovative part of the EDSSI project is that, you know, making this first step to have this standardized and structured connection with the SSPs and the EWP network. So this is the presentation of the network in a nutshell. I would say we can say many more things if colleagues wish so. Thank you for your attention, and of course, in the next sections, I'm available for anything you want to discuss. Thank you, Lorenzo. The floor is yours again.
Thank you, and thanks for the clarification. Indeed, it's this was a joint effort, and I think that the great added value of this project is really bringing together the different angles and the different perspectives. And the purpose of the forum today is really to give space to the service providers. I have not received any questions yet from the service providers here, but I guess that this is probably too much policy level or too much project level of information. So let's deep dive into the dashboard, meaning that we want to have a really a sneak preview of what this dashboard is. What does it do? What are the functionalities? And the master who will take us throughout this process is Bruno Pereira, who's a software engineer who has been working with other members of the consortium and the team of Porto to develop this dashboard. As you will see, it's really user-friendly, it's really straightforward, and just a word of caution, this is not the end line of this product. This is the beginning of this product. This is something that we will build on, and this is exactly why we have this forum today. It would be great if you could tell us, oh, I think we need a little bit more of this, or this is not needed. This is very useful, and can you expand it? Or this is not that useful, so it's a waste of my time. So this is the purpose. And so, Bruno, I leave the floor to you, and most importantly, the screen. I know that typically we have some audio issues, so let's try your microphone and then we go ahead. If there is any problem with the audio, I will tell you.
Yes, please. But hopefully we will not have any problems with the audio. Hello, everyone. As Lorenzo said, I am Bruno from Porto, and today I'm going to talk to you more about what is the aim of the dashboard and how does it, what is the theory of it and the functionality of it, and not really showing you in practice how it works. So what is this SSP module that we are developing for the dashboard? So the Erasmus dashboard already contains some modules. So for example, you can go to the Erasmus dashboard and manage the interinstitutional agreements, the default data, the learning agreements, etc. But now we are adding another module on top of that, which is the SSP module. And the aim of this module is for both institutions or SSPs to be able to input their student data in this module, so to be shared across like all of the network, basically. So the dashboard will collect all this information regarding the student services of the institutions, and it will share them across the dashboard partners, the other institutions on the Erasmus Without Paper network. But how can me, as for example, an IRO, can input this information there? So first we have here an IRO, and the IRO first starts by selecting a service. And what is a service? Well, it means that like me as an IRO from University of Porto, I want to support an accommodation service or a transportation or an insurance service. Okay, I have what service do I want, but who will provide that? Well, he has to choose a provider, and this provider, as I said, can be one of two entities. It can be either an external SSP or can be the institution itself. Okay, and in the dashboard SSP database, we will insert the information that these institutions provide. So, for example, I have an external SSP, like for example, I don't know, ENDISU, which supports an accommodation service. So me as an IRO from Porto can go to the dashboard and say, I want to support an accommodation service from ENDISU, and the dashboard will select that selection, and it will share it across network. Shared with previously has already input the information that it supports an accommodation service on the dashboard. So I'm basically saying that I support that service that it provides, or I can just go there as an IRO and input my information there. Maybe I want to say that I support a library and I input my own information there. As I said, you can select either way, but the advantages of this is that the information becomes all centralized in the dashboard and can be shared across the other institutions, and one institution can just consult the dashboard and say, what is a service that's what are the services that I don't know, an university from Germany, for example, provides, or what are the informations that another dashboard partner provides, or even this can be integrated with the Erasmus app. So there's a lot of versatility here in sharing this information across multiple platforms. So I'll just show some screenshots of the service. So as you can see in the first one, maybe if I zoom in a little bit, I am. This is a screenshot of me as an arrow selecting an accommodation service. And on this screenshot right here, you can see that I selected the own information option, and therefore I can input my information. Not all these fields are different are unique for each service type. So an accommodation may have an icon address, but I don't know, a canteen may not. Okay, this is maybe not a good example, but I don't know, maybe an accommodation may have a minimum hosting period, but maybe a library does not. So the fields are unique to each type. And on this screenshot here, maybe I'm not passing the slides. And in the screenshot here, you can see that I basically inserted some information regarding a canteen. And I can see that information here. Then here, instead of choosing on information, I chose an SSP. So I want to support a library from an SSP. And I selected the SSP, in this case, Provider Inc., a test provider. And I can see what library does the Provider Inc. provides. And I can choose to add this information, meaning that my university will now support this information. As I said, this will be by default shared across the DWP network. This is public information. And with this, I conclude a very brief presentation of the dashboard module. And thank you for your attention.
That's great. Thank you. This is really a helicopter view of what the dashboard looks like and what are the functionalities. The idea is really, as Bruno was showing in the slides, is really about, it's a plug and play solution for higher education institutions to use and invite the student service providers to come in and build these aspects of trust and build this network of trusted members, where the mutual trust really comes into play in facilitating this interaction between the students, the service providers, and the IROs. For us, what is really important is to understand, is to get a sense of this dashboard and how this dashboard can really bring in the different actors together. Now, I wanted to ask a little bit, to do a little tour de table with our service providers to get a sense on whether they have any experience that they want to share in dealing the relationship with the international relations offices, if there is any aspects of catering to the students in undertaking an international mobility. Pier Enrico Maringoni, the CEO of Indomus. Just as a reminder, Indomus is a private sector service provider from Italy, catering to students, primarily national students, if I understand correctly.
No, not only national students.
Service of accommodation. Please,
yeah.
Enrico.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lorenzo. I'm happy to break the ice for SSP, please. I'm happy to share my experience. First of all, I would say that I fully subscribe chart number 4 of Sarah's presentation, in the sense that there is certainly a strong need for having a trusted network among HEIs, IROs, and SSPs. In addition, in that chart was mentioned that there is a shortage of accommodation, and that's very true, and it's very true that let's say PBSA, which means purpose-built student accommodation, is becoming an important asset class in real estate in continental Europe. So there are a lot of investments underway, and hopefully also in most countries of continental Europe, in few years there will be a situation comparable to the UK, which is certainly in this respect is leading the pack. PBSA's operators are offering accommodation under a so-called all-inclusive scheme, which means that all the costs like utilities, Wi-Fi, and other services needed to students are included in the tariffs. And also they provide a support to students. So certainly a trusted PBSA operators will give, let's say, a framework of certainty and will avoid risk and strange situations to students. Indomus is the largest PBSA's operator in Milan, and obviously we have some, let's say, interaction with IROs of local universities. These interactions are limited, unfortunately, and certainly the interactions are not extended to international IROs. So the opportunity to grant places to exchange students are rather limited. Clearly, what I saw in terms of, let's say, the database offered by the dashboard, to me is a great advancement. So I'm looking forward to know how let's say, populating this database. My suggestion would be that in addition, as information, would be useful to indicate also the suggested time within which let's say, include the request for booking. Because really a problem that we have with international students, exchange students, is that they come and request to make reservations when we are fully booked. That's particularly true for the second semester students. So improving the communication and letting know to students to plan in due time their organization for coming to a new country will be useful. I don't know if HEIs can help. Indicating and giving indications for let's say, for the approval for exchange programs in advance. But if that is already given, it's important that students are made aware that they should plan accordingly.
Thank you, Enrico. This is this is quite valuable. If I understand correctly, what you're saying is international mobility students follow a specific timeline, and so there is an issue of timing and making sure that service providers can accommodate their needs, because the flows of the flows of students or users for your services are different. So we have the regular or the in-house or the national students that have a pretty much predictable timeline, while the international mobility students have a different flow, and they come in at different moments of the academic year, and that may probably generate an issue. And so in this case, I think that this is a very good element for us to consider in the dashboard, or in the next dashboard, Erasmus dashboard 2.0 or stuff like that. Like, we're embedding the timing or the equation, the timing element into the equation. I see that Emily has raised her hand, as well as Sara. Sara has 2 hands raised.
No, actually, I did mistake the other one. But after Emily, I would like to add a few.
Yes, Emily,
Yes.
also again from CNUS from France. Please.
Yes, hello everyone. I just wanted to share what CNUS will probably do with the dashboard, because we have already a national infrastructure, but with the dashboard we will connect to it to allow the student from abroad to access the key information for accommodation in their language, because in France our platform offer only English translation, and hopefully in a future web platform they will be able to access the data that are centralized in the dashboard in their language. It would be really great, because it's hard to organize and to build a language module in every language, at most for the key information, and then they will improve their English. But also I guess each local agencies will from France, the CRUS will connect also to show their link with the HEIs and share the addresses of facilities, maybe, and hopefully this information will ease the students to find the right information. And I wanted to share this.
Thank you, Emily. This is very important. It takes us also to another couple of elements that I also want to raise that are very much in line with the Erasmus Plus program and with the concept of the European educational area, which are language, which on the one hand may be considered, maybe deemed at the very beginning as a barrier. But then when we turn this barrier or this challenge into an opportunity, then it becomes what the European Commission calls multilingualism, which is always something very important for the Erasmus Plus program. In fact, every time we go into the Erasmus Plus program guide of any year, it's always in the very first 20 pages of the 300-page document, there is always multilingualism mentioned. But Emily, this is a very interesting input that you're giving to us. So I have the timing and the flow of the users that Mr. Maringoni raised from Indomos. I have the multilingualism and the language dimension from Emily. Sara, I know you're eager to talk.
No, actually, I just want to clarify something related to what Pierenrico Maringoni said, because the tool that we present is not a web service that gives access to services itself. Instead, it just show and exposes the information. It is an easy way to let international relation officers who are the ones providing the information to students about the services that are available in a certain city. So it's a good way for SSPs to increase their visibility in a sense to their services, but it does not solve for now the issue, for instance, to the booking management system that you mentioned. So students still have to get in touch with the student service providers. But of course, it's a good input, and we will take into consideration in future projects, actually. So it's also nice to have this forum because then we can get inputs from people who are actually working with those kind of things. And of course, we already have had the time and had the opportunity to talk with the international relation officers. But of course, since we want to create this network where all the stakeholders, as we said, collaborate and communicate each other, so we need also to have your point of view. So it's nice to hear, and thank you, Maringoni. Yeah.
Yes, I would just say that the key thing is that students have the essential information. Then, according to my experience, they are smart enough to undertake directly contacts and we are let's say organized to manage everything up to their booking. So it's important just that they know where to ask, and from there everything will be easier.
Yeah. Nikos, I see you raised your hand.
Yes, Lorenzo, if I may, because I see a very interesting input in the chat, so I would probably like to reflect on that from Christina from ELTE, from Hungary. I think that, and she's talking about disabilities and providing services to students with disabilities, and working in an IRO, I personally know how difficult it is if there's the whole set of information for mobility for for a student with disabilities, how problematic issue can be. And so I think this is also very good input in order for the next updates of the SSP module to include it among the basic information that SSPs can provide, because except for housing and restaurants and libraries, which is very important for the broader population, student population, I think this information is very, very crucial and you mentioned also, the new priorities of the European Commission, and inclusion is also one very high priority. So I think that the module here can also help in this direction to be able to gather this information. And I would like to invite Christina, if she wants to share something more, to raise her hand and probably turn on her video camera and share with us more on this, because it's quite interesting. The other colleagues probably. Thank you.
Hello, Christina. Good morning and welcome. And thanks for raising these aspects. And I see that you're talking about a minimum standard would really be useful. And I think that everybody around this digital table tends to agree with that. Please share your experiences.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. So I am the disability coordinator of ELTE University and also a service provider for students with disabilities. And we also deal with students with Erasmus who are outgoing and incoming students with Erasmus who have some kind of health problem or disability. And in my view, when we want to send students, that the services for them are quite different in each countries, and the students sometimes, and in many cases, do not choose university on their real wishes, on their interest, but rather what kind of services there are. And I think it's a discrimination. And with minimum standard, I think it would be very useful if Erasmus Plus is really on the side of inclusion, the new coming years, to have some kind of minimum standard which each university who wants to accept students with disabilities should provide. I don't want to say it's an easy job. I am in many different organizations working on it, but it's really not easy, but I think it would be very useful, and also to put all the information in the dashboard for students with disabilities as well. Thank you. You are muted.
Thank you very much, Christina. This is quite a very important point. I see that Nikos has his hand raised, and then I'll share my 2 cents on this. Please, Nikos.
Once again, thanks, Christina, for sharing. I think that this would be the ultimate goal, to have these minimum standards for disability, for students with disabilities. I'm afraid that it's indeed a complex task, and I'm not sure the timeline for this, but I think that the first step would be, first of all, to provide this information. So the first step is to see the landscape, to map the landscape. What do we provide now? And I think once again, the SSP module is a very good starting point on this. So to know within a city, at least, which institutions and which service providers can cater for students with disabilities. So with this task, I think we can then proceed and propose probably to the Commission that, look, this is the, the minimum, this is the service provided to students with disabilities. So probably we can set up a framework for the minimum standards. And I'm really glad that, the module is the starter for this kind of discussions. Once again,
thank you, Nikos. And on this one, I wanted to share at least my personal view, which is my 2 cents, and then my institutional perspective. From a personal perspective, I think that this is quite an issue that is so obvious that it's often not mentioned. I think that the standards are a fantastic tool, and standards are usually voluntary. And so they are developed by industry and participants into the ecosystem. And so us as higher education institutions, IROs, it's an issue of responsibility, and it's also an issue of accountability. And I would talk about disability, or actually I would talk about special needs, or anything that goes into the educational aspects. From an ENDISU perspective, and this is something that I wanted to share, at ENDISU we have a very strong operational experience on students with disabilities and students in need, or students that come from vulnerable backgrounds, where the vulnerability is not only the disability, which then can be mental and physical disability, but it's also another sort of disadvantage. So the disadvantaged students really encompass a wide range of, it's a quite large cohort. On this one at ENDISU, it's because for us, our mission is really about the right to education. And so anything that can erode this right, or anything that can constitute a barrier to that right to study, is something that is really in our it's in our mission, corporate mission. And so this is something that we have been working on for quite some time. At the same time, I think, and I see many linkages also with other initiatives like the European Student Card, on whether the ESC can become then a tool to promote further inclusion. And in fact, I want to thank again Christina, because Christina, you're giving us food for thought for many other projects, because this is a little bit outside of the scope of the EDSSI. But I think that the Erasmus dashboard can become a very important tool for higher education institutions. And I can imagine in the dashboard visually, and I'm talking to Bruno and to Nikos and to Emily and Deborah, on how we can translate this comment into a functionality within the dashboard, which is one of those non-mandatory fields. Yeah, but thank you again. This is quite an interesting point. I want to raise an aspect, and I leave it here in the chat. It's a question that was raised during the registration from one of the participants. How universities cooperate with local service providers. And this is something that for the participants who were not with us at Thessaloniki on May 18th, where we had the EDSSI conference, international conference hosted by Nikos and his team. We had many interesting experiences shared among the participants. And one of the trends that was really emerging is how higher education institutions can link with the participants in their territories. Participants can be public administration, so the local authorities, but also the service providers. And in the registration form, all the participants had an option of leaving a question. And this is one of the questions that were raised or were put as a placeholder. And I wanted to brainstorm a little bit with all of you on how you as an IRO, or how you as a service provider get in touch with the universities locally. So who do you call? Do you call, you know, the administrative office, the admission office, the student service office, the Erasmus Plus office, or you don't call them, or you write a generic email at info. So is there anything that you can share with us? And I see there is a long chat. So give me, while I read this, you think about this question. And give me also a few items to work with. So there is no one really coming up with any comments on how you reach out to the universities. So none of the service providers here have any hints on how to reach out to the universities. Emily, come rescue. And then Pereira.
No,
yes.
so please, Emily.
Yes,
After you.
We not really. I will not answer to the how reach out, but we have this contract between HEI and each local agencies to for accommodation to block a contingent of room, and this is how the relationship is organized. It's a framework contract that said what are the conditions of this relation for ease the welcoming of the students in these facilities. So this is how, and of course we have the welcome desk for in each cruise for and there is this discussion, of course, in each major town that welcome students between between the IRO office and these agencies. This is how it works in larger lines.
The macro level.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I can confirm that we also have so-called nomination agreements with universities, according to which universities buy from us for a limited range of time, which is typically the academic year, the right to appoint students selected by them. But these nomination agreements at the moment are limited to local universities. So we don't have this type of contracts with international universities, which certainly would be instrumental to secure places to exchange students. And then, as I mentioned before, the interaction with IROs of universities that are not based in our domestic country is basically not existing, at least for us. I don't know if other SSPs.
Yeah, there is also that dimension of linking up with other universities in other countries.
Yeah.
Nikos, please.
Yes, Lorenzo, if I may, I would like to respond a little bit to react to what Matt wrote on the chat about being a private sector agency, let's say, connecting, as you mentioned, the bundle supply. I would just want to highlight for other colleagues that are already attending and are from external SSPs, as we call it, so non-academic, non-higher education institutions, to clarify that in order to be able to input their information, whatever they provide, discounts or housing offers or any other services, they should be invited by a higher education institution in their country, in their city. So the best thing, the next thing that they should do once this SSP module is in production, they should reach out to the higher education institutions, and since once they are a trusted partner, then they can be invited in the module in order to input and insert their information. Of course, the responsibility for this information lies on the provider and not on the university. The university just held the responsibility of endorsing the certain SSP, because there might be also an issue. I understand that universities do not probably not want to take the responsibility of the information shared with their trusted partners because it's not their information. So just a quick clarification on this front.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. In fact, this experience from Mecenat or Mecenat, depending on how you want to pronounce it, it's very interesting because it's really bringing together, you know, bridging the supply and demand for services with a strong focus on students. And then the Erasmus dashboard becomes the tool for the higher education institution to list them so that they become more visible to the users. Emily, I see you raised your hand.
Yes, because once you register in the dashboard, for CNUS, for example, we are a national-wide service provider. So first, one university will invite us and we will feed our informations, but then each university will find us in the list because we are a nationwide services. So there we just have to select us in the list, and and the same for the local agency. There is several HEIs that use the same provider for their accommodation. So they will find the first will say this is the one that I trust, and the other will find us in the list and just add in their dashboard environment and say that it is also our provider. So in the beginning we will add a lot of information, but then it will spread for all HEIs that use this relation.
Yeah, it's precisely the networking effect that the Erasmus dashboard will also contribute to generating. For us, I think an important takeaway from today is really to get a sense from the service providers as potential users of the Erasmus dashboard. Is there any piece missing? Are we asking one too many questions or one too many pieces of information? Is there something that you would add or something that you would cut? I know that the aerial view or the overview of the dashboard was probably very quick, but at the same time, it was quick because it's a very user-friendly tool. So it's a very functional, very user-friendly tool with functionalities that really are meant to make sure to streamline the relationship between the service provider and the users. Nikos, please.
Yes, I want to add to what you were saying, Lorenzo, that of course colleagues, because there's a certain duration in this forum for discussion, but if colleagues want to have a deeper look into how it works, they can also refer to the trainings that we have and have already been concluded. And so I think there they will see more, and they will see a proper, let's say, showcase and a demo of the module. So they can probably go. I think that it has been already published. I'm not quite sure. Yes, there were notes, so this is the case.
Yeah, we can also show actually where they can find.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could someone maybe add it on the chat, the link, because I know there is a
Sure.
YouTube video available.
Yeah, I can share it. It's a good idea. I can share the link. So here you have the resources from the training. The training that we did on the new dashboard module on student services. So there you can find all the recorded videos.
Christina is leaving, so thank you, Christina, again for dropping dropping by, participating, and sharing your experience with the issue of students with specific backgrounds or special needs and disability to work on this inclusion. In fact, higher education institutions are supposed to become a focal point to promote diversity and inclusion throughout the European educational area. Is there any comments? Again, I would really like to hear from any of the participants, if you feel like sharing any specific experience that you had, or any specific challenge that you see. If there are no more comments, I think that we can probably wrap it up. And I would like to thank again all the participants for their patience. I know that it's really putting your patience to the limit, but I'm sure that also looking at the comments that we have received in the chat, that this is an interesting topic. I know that everybody's probably embarking for a much-deserved summer break, but the good news is that the EDSSI doesn't never go on vacation. So we are now busy wrapping up the project, finalizing the dashboard. As Nikos and Sara mentioned, we have plenty of resources on our website, which is edssi.eu. This is where you have the description of the tools, the description of the Erasmus dashboard, and most importantly, the training that is out there so that you can have all operational references. I want to thank again the European University Foundation for having led the EDSSI project. I want to thank Fondazione ENDISU also for having hosted this set of webinars, forums, and virtual exchanges. And then again, CNUS, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and University of Porto, and of course, Maringoni from Liolios. So thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Keep in touch and reach out at any time.
Thank you.
Thank you.